Hey Google, good morning.
Hello, it's 9:43 a.m. Right now in Scottsdale, it's 78 degrees and sunny. Today, it'll be sunny with a forecasted high of 92 and a low of 67. The best way to get to work by car is via North 78th Street and will take about 5 minutes. No tasks for today. Have a wonderful day. Here's the latest news from BBC News Summary at 9:06 a.m. today.
I'm Debbie Russ with the BBC News. Hello. The White
What's
House
going on in the world
confirmed that a phone
today?
conversation is currently underway between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. The war in Ukraine and the possibility of a ceasefire were expected to be the main items on the agenda. The BBC's Anthony Zerka in Washington says Mr. Trump has repeatedly stressed the importance of his personal relationship with Mr. Putin.
It was a conversation I had with Donald Trump on Air Force One just last week, where he did say that he didn't think now that this war would be resolved until he and Vladimir Putin sat down together at the table and hashed it all out. So this is a first step in that direction, and the White House is pinning a lot of hopes on the fact that Donald Trump, his direct involvement in his relationship with Vladimir Putin, can move the Russian president towards negotiating for an end to the war.
The Israeli Prime Minister has said Israel will take
MMI, we expect the
to
unexpected.
prevent Hamas from reaching
Sure.
aid. Benjamin Netanyahu was speaking after he to allow a limited amount of food into the territory. An Israeli blockade has brought Gaza to the verge of famine. Mike Thompson reports.
In what Benjamin Netanyahu called his war and victory plan, he set out to address two main objectives: growing US concerns over mass hunger in Gaza, raised by right-wing reports that Hamas would soon carry allied in, and specifically created chaos strategic reports and how US decreases killed by the invading military with few angry Gazans claimed committed by Hamas. But as many as 28 trucks and crossing the Gaza on Monday, UN helping initially
Oh,
Britain and the European Union have agreed a series of deals aimed at resetting relations 9 years after the Brexit vote. The new agreements on issues including fishing rights and defence cooperation were unveiled at a summit in London. The President of the
you see
European
anything you
Commission,
like?
Ursula von der Leyen, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer hailed it as a new chapter that benefited both sides. The chair of the EU-UK Parliamentary Partnership Assembly, Sandro Gozzi, gave the BBC his reaction.
The UK has already been suffering a lot from Brexit, but we want to seize the opportunity which is coming finally from 10 Downing Street to organize a relationship between two big realities such as EU and UK on a better basis, and this is what we have started to
Let
do
me know if you
today
need
with the
a
EU-UK
hand,
summit.
okay?
Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan has accused foreign activists of interfering in the country's internal affairs and trying to disturb the peace. She made the remarks after several Kenyan lawyers and activists were denied entry to Tanzania to observe the treason trial of the main opposition leader. World News from the BBC. Russia has banned the human rights group International, designating it an undesirable organization. The Russian Prosecutor General said Amnesty's headquarters in London was a center for the preparation of what he called global Russian projects. Russia has banned dozens of international civil society groups that have spoken up about human rights abuses since its full-scale invasion of Ukraine began more than 3 years ago. Lithuania has filed a complaint at the UN's top court, accusing neighbouring Belarus of the mass smuggling of migrants across
Hope
their
you find
shared
it,
border.
I guess.
Lithuania, Poland and Latvia have all seen an unprecedented wave of migrants coming from Belarus in recent years.
Lithuania alleges that since 2021, Belarus has deliberately engineered a surge in irregular migration as a form of political pressure. According to Lithuanian authorities, Belarusian state enterprises increased flights from the Middle East and other regions, issued visas, and arranged accommodation for thousands of migrants, many from Afghanistan, Iran, and Syria, before escorting them to the Lithuanian border and forcing them to cross illegally. Vilnius characterizes these actions as a hybrid attack.
The International Court of Justice has sided with Equatorial Guinea in a decades-long dispute with Gabon over 3 small islands. They're virtually uninhabited but lie in an area potentially rich in oil and gas. The dispute dates back to the start of the 20th century when the colonial powers, France and Spain, signed a treaty demarcating the borders. Japan's agriculture minister has apologized for joking that he never had to buy any rice at a time when consumers are struggling to pay for the mealtime staple. Taku Ito told a fundraising event that he received so much what he said gifts from supporters that he had enough to sell. The comments led to a furious reaction from many Japanese people who've seen the price of rice double in a year. BBC News.
From CNN 5 Things at 9:02 a.m. today.
Creating your own business is everything. Getting it registered and compliant, not so much. LegalZoom has everything you need to launch, run, and protect your business all in one place. LegalZoom has already helped launch, run, and protect millions of businesses. LegalZoom, now you're in business. Get everything you need from setup to success at LegalZoom.com. LegalZoom provides access to independent attorneys and self-service tools. LegalZoom is not a law firm and does not provide legal advice, except for authorized through its subsidiary law firm LC Legal Services, LLC.
God damn, that ad was
Hey there
loud.
from CNN, I'm Krista Bell with the 5 Things you need to know for Monday, May 19th.
Hey, Google.
President Donald
Never mind.
Trump has been speaking with Russian President Vladimir
Okay, volume's
Putin
back to
on the
normal.
phone
That ad
about
was
ending the war in Ukraine.
crazy
Trump
loud
is
for
also
some reason.
expected to speak with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and NATO members after the Putin call. It comes a day after Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio met Zelensky in Rome, as talks between Ukrainians and Russian officials yielded few results last week, and Moscow ramped up its attacks. While Vance was on Air Force One this morning, he previewed what the president might say to Putin.
We realize there's a bit of an impasse here, and I think the president's going to say to President Putin, look, are you serious? Are you real about this? So if you're willing to stop the killing, the United States is willing to be a partner for peace.
Trump has issued another stern rebuke to corporate America over price rises due to tariffs. On Saturday, in a Truth Social post, he told Walmart to, quote, eat the tariffs before adding, quote, I'll be watching. The warning comes after Walmart said last week it may have to jack up some prices because of high costs of the global trade war. And it follows a similar spat with Amazon and toy manufacturer Mattel. Despite Trump's threats, a new survey by the National Association of Business Economics suggests prices will rise, as CNN's Matt Egan explains.
There's such a debate over how inflationary tariffs are going to be and who's going to pay for the tariff. This survey finds that 1 in 4 U.S. firms, they plan to raise prices as a result of U.S. tariffs and retaliatory tariffs. 2 out of 3 companies that are in the goods-producing sector say they plan to raise prices. And what's notable is exactly 0% of the firms who were surveyed say they plan to cut prices.
Cutting prices is what President Trump promised to make happen during last year's election campaign. Second week of Sean Diddy Combs' federal criminal trial began today with testimony from a former member of the musical group he formed, Vanity Kane. Dawn Richards said today that she frequently saw Combs be violent against his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. She said last week that she didn't report the abuse because she was afraid and was, quote, scared to do anything in fear of what that might mean for me too. Richards' time on the stand comes after Ventura finished her nearly 20 hours of testimony last week. Prosecutor's star witness testified that Combs physically abused her, forced her into drug-fueled sex acts called freak-offs, and raped her in 2018, describing years of violence, emotional manipulation, and addiction. Diddy has pleaded not guilty to charges that include racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. For more in-depth analysis of this trial, listen to CNN's new podcast, Trial by Jury, hosted by CNN anchor and former prosecutor Laura Coates. Victims of deep fake images are getting help from the federal government. President Trump is set to sign the Take It Down Act in the ceremony at the White House this afternoon, which will make it illegal to share non-consensual, real, or computer-generated explicit images online. The law will also require tech companies to remove the images from their platforms within 48 hours of being notified about them. Platforms had 1 year to implement the changes. The bill received bipartisan backing, and First Lady Melania Trump also threw her support behind the effort by lobbying House lawmakers in April to pass the legislation. Coming up, some good news for New Jersey rail commuters.
Hello, this is Jan at Toyota.
Hi, Jen. Is now a good time to get a new Toyota?
It is. We'd like to say your summer starts here at your Toyota dealer. Now through June 2nd, we have a great selection of Camrys, Corollas, Tundras, and more.
I'm a pet sitter and business is way up as people enjoy this.
Keep going to Toyota Bay there. See your participating Toyota dealer for details.
Toyota, let's go places.
New Jersey Transit and the union representing rail engineers have reached a tentative agreement.
And as a result, New Jersey's first rail strike in decades has officially come to an end.
Governor Phil Murphy and the Rail Engineers Union said the deal is a good one for both members and the railroad. But despite engineers being back on the job today, commuters are still being asked to work from home if they can. New Jersey Transit CEO said the railroad gave that they reduce their operations. All right, that's all for now. I'm Krista Bell, and the next episode drops at 3 p.m. Eastern. Until next time.
From DW News Brief at 4:52 a.m. today.
Cool.
This is DW News, and these are our top stories. Israel has ordered the evacuation of Gaza's second largest city, Han Yunis, as it ramps up its offensive against Hamas. The Israeli military is warning of an unprecedented attack and has urged residents to move to the coast. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will ease its blockade of Gaza to allow unlimited amounts of aid. Pope Leo has received U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio for a private audience. It's their first formal meeting with the U.S.-born pontiff. The White House is trying to strengthen relations with the Vatican by working together on peace efforts for Ukraine and Gaza.
Look around. Okay.
Britain says it has struck new post-Brexit deals with the EU as it tries to reset its ties with the bloc. The agreements aim to ease food, trade, and border checks while boosting defense cooperation. 5 years after the UK left the EU, Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the new arrangements will slash red tape and help his nation's economy. This is DW News from Berlin. You can get much more news on our website. That's dw.com.
I thought.
From Forbes at 9 p.m. yesterday. Here's your Forbes Daily Briefing for Monday, May 19th. Today on Forbes, Elon Musk's Tesla robotaxi rollout looks like a disaster waiting to happen. Elon Musk is rolling out a handful of Tesla robotaxis in Austin next month, where up to 20 self-driving electric Model Ys will be unleashed to ferry passengers around the Texas city streets. He's betting the future of Tesla on their success, as the automaker's electric vehicle revenue tanks, thanks to faster-growing Chinese rivals and a political backlash against Musk's right-wing politics and role as job slasher-in-chief for the Trump administration. But there's a big hitch. Tesla hasn't proven its self-driving taxis are safe enough to start delivering rides. Given its misleadingly named autopilot and full self-driving software's deadly track record, Musk's failure to provide detailed safety and technical data about Tesla's technology, and his determination to rely on cheap cameras instead of more robust sensors to navigate complicated urban environments, the Austin rollout could be a debacle. Dan O'Dowd, a longtime critic of Musk's autonomous driving claims, who spent his own money on Super Bowl commercials to call out autopilot and full self-driving, or FSD, safety flaws, told Forbes, quote, "It's going to fail for sure." His anti-Tesla initiative, the Dawn Project, tests every update of FSD, a more advanced version of which is powering Musk's robotaxis in Austin, as soon as they're available. That update is to roll out to all Tesla drivers who pay a $99 monthly subscription fee. O'Dowd has been putting the current version of FSD through its paces. O'Dowd, whose company Green Hills Software supplies security tech to defense and aerospace industry customers, said, quote, "We drove it around Santa Barbara for 80 minutes, and there were 7 failures. If there had not been a driver sitting in the driver's seat, it would have hit something." While the company hasn't booked $1 of robotaxi revenue, that hasn't stopped the world's wealthiest person from declaring victory. On the company's April 22nd results call, Musk said, quote, "I don't see anyone being able to compete with Tesla at present." His assessment may be premature. The sole demonstration of Tesla's robotaxi chops was staged drives of its new so-called Cybercab at Warner Brothers Studio in Los Angeles last October. The event included hauling invited Tesla fans around a fake cityscape, free of pedestrians, but with lots of Tesla technicians keeping close tabs on vehicles. It struck safety researcher Noah Goodall, who published a technical analysis of Tesla's safety data, independently from his role with the Virginia Department of Transportation, as more amusement park attraction than real-world test. Goodall said, quote, "It was just operating vehicles on a closed track on a movie lot. It was not impressive at all. Navigating a real urban environment with uncertainty, other parties moving around, situations where just braking is not enough, that's difficult. I was looking for a signal this was ready. I didn't get that." In the decade since Tesla began selling customers its autopilot and FSD features, for which it currently charges $8,000, the software has been linked to several fatal accidents where human drivers trusted the tech to drive their car, only for it to crash. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has opened multiple probes of Tesla's autopilot feature since 2016, including one last year to determine if it needed additional safety features after linking autopilot to those 13 deaths. Last October, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration also began investigating problems with FSD linked to 2 fatalities. Despite the names, the software has always been designed to have a human behind the wheel. For the past decade, Musk has repeatedly claimed, quote, "full autonomy," where a car can drive without human assistance, was only months or a year away, repeatedly missing his targets. Now, with Tesla's EV sales down 13% in the first quarter, the company needs some buzz to reassure investors CEO Musk can turn things around. Robotaxis, as well as AI robots, are exactly that, according to Musk. So it's running extensive tests in downtown Austin. But a recent Business Insider story, citing interviews with former Tesla test drivers, doesn't inspire confidence. One former worker said that the program, quote, "feels very forced. It's this breakthrough moment for Tesla, but there's also this feeling of so many last-minute details being up in the air." For full coverage, check out Alan Ohmsman's piece on Forbes.com. This is Kieran Meadows from Forbes. Thanks for tuning in.
From Fox News at 9:06 a.m. today.
Presidential diplomacy. Lisa Brady, Fox News. President Trump holding a call with Russia's President Putin. Another afterward with Ukraine's President Zelensky, hoping to move peace talks forward after Putin did not answer Zelensky's call to meet in person.
President Trump does not think the war in Ukraine is going to end until he sits face-to-face with Vladimir Putin. So this call could be to set the terms for that. President Trump says also the subjects of the call will be stopping the bloodbath that is killing on average more than 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week, and trade, too.
Fox and Peter Doocy at the White House. Former President Joe Biden posting a picture with Mrs. Biden and offering thanks after an outpouring of support over his cancer diagnosis. President Trump wishing his predecessor a speedy recovery.
Former president revealed an aggressive prostate cancer diagnosis. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says President Trump is confident with his doctors.
The White House physician we have here is phenomenal, and the team of physicians that take care of the president, particularly at Walter Reed Medical Center, are great. The president had his physical recently, as you know.
Spokesman for former President Biden says he is reviewing treatment options with his physician.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. Damage assessments continue in multiple states after deadly weekend tornadoes. London, Kentucky, one of the hardest hit areas. Justin McIntyre and his mom survived after he tackled her into a bathtub as the roof of their home was torn off and the tub was lifted.
And we're flipping through the air.
And I remember your first thought is, I'm dying right here. I'm dead. And I said, Jesus, would you have mercy on us? And as I prayed that, the second I prayed, the tornado dropped us.
At least 19 people were killed in Kentucky, several more in Missouri and Virginia. No reports of casualties west of Fort Worth, Texas, where the Weather Service confirmed a large tornado yesterday. America is listening to Fox News.
Something new is happening at Cox. Now the price of your Cox Internet and mobile plan won't go up for 3 years, and Wi-Fi equipment is included. So no frustrating price changes, just a lot more of what you want, like a pizza with extra pineapple. Yikes. Okay, let's stick with something everyone wants. No price changes on your plan, guaranteed. Learn more at cox.com/value. Must have at least 500 megabits per second speeds and Cox Unlimited mobile taxes and fees excluded from price guarantee. Mobile data speeds reduced after 20 gigs usage per month.
The NTSB now investigating the deadly crash of a Mexican off the New York City bridge over the weekend, but the Coast Guard and Homeland Security are already denying one theory about government efficiency measures.
New York's Democrat Senate Leader Chuck Schumer making a Doge claim about the Mexican Navy tall ship disaster when its propulsion failed and a 160-foot tall mast hit the Brooklyn Bridge, killing 2 crew.
I have the general sense of a Doge dysfunction in parts of the Coast Guard.
DHS says false. Coast Guard is exempt from hiring freezes, and the Coast Guard vehicle traffic system was fully functional. The tall ship had just backed out of South Street Seaport when its commercial tugboat escort peeled away. But the East River wind and current were swift, and the ship's 3 steel masts hit the span and snapped. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum says, "We regret that this has been used politically because it was an accident." Therese Crowley, Fox News.
The White House says the world has confidence in the U.S. economy and that President Trump disagrees with Moody's assessment downgrading the U.S. credit rating over concerns about rising federal debts.
Economist Stephen Moore says, yes, the deficit is too big, but he believes Moody's downgrade of the U.S. debt rating has very little credibility.
The idea that somehow America's AAA rating is somehow in jeopardy is crazy, or the idea that somehow we're going to default on the debt is crazy.
Moore is a former Trump administration economic advisor. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told NBC's Meet the Press it's a reaction to spending in the previous administration.
We didn't get here in the past 100 days.
Bessent says the Trump administration will ensure that U.S. economic growth outpaces its debt.
Fox's Jacob Sola. No big reaction on Wall Street right now. Stocks turning mixed. The Dow's up 6 points. The S&P's down 11. The Nasdaq down about 70 points. And Lisa Brady, Fox News.
Listen to the all-new Brett Baier podcast featuring Common Ground, in-depth talks with lawmakers from opposite sides of the aisle, along with all your Brett Baier favorites like his All-Star panel and much more. Available now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
From NPR Science at midnight today.
This message comes from U.S. Bank. Simplify how you do business with Business Essentials, a powerful combination of no monthly maintenance fee checking and card payment processing. Deposit products are offered by U.S. Bank National Association, member FDIC.
You're listening to Shortwave
Over here.
from NPR. Space. I love it. And the things inside of it. Us, of course, stars, galaxies I studied, and I even love the other cool hypothetical stuff that mostly lives in science fiction, like wormholes. Wormholes are a funky but possible solution to Albert Einstein's famous equations for the theory of general relativity. These theoretical cosmic portals can shorten a trip from hundreds of light years to minutes. Wormholes have been a mainstay of transportation in movies like Interstellar,
That's the one.
and TV shows like my favorite, Star Trek. Which Ron Campbell says is not far off from how scientists think about these wormholes.
It's very much like a bridge. You can do this thought experiment yourself. You take a sheet of paper, you fold it kind of like in half, and you poke a pencil hole right through the middle. And that is essentially a wormhole. It connects 2 points in space and time together.
Ron's a theoretical physicist, and he wrote his PhD on funky solutions to Einstein's equations for general relativity, like wormholes. Basically, he did this by studying space-time, the 4-dimensional existence we all live in. It includes 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time moving forward as that 4th dimension. And general relativity talks about how space-time itself has a shape to it. A shape that is distorted by all of the wonders inside of it. All the beautiful stars, planets, galaxies, black holes. Their distortion of space-time is gravity. And if you push that gravity to its extreme, you get black holes. And some physicists theorize that white holes could also exist. And that would be the opposite to a black hole. They'd push out matter instead of consuming it. And the thing that could connect them is a wormhole. But scientists have never seen one. And as a lifelong Trekkie, I've long wanted to know, could we ever? Or are wormholes purely science fiction?
I think, according to the physics, there is a non-zero chance that we could find a wormhole.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I think if we find a wormhole, that means someone else created it.
So today on the show, wormholes, the geometry of space-time, and how to a theoretical physicist. If the math checks out, you can't rule it out. I'm Regina Barber, and you're listening to Shortwave, the science podcast from NPR.
I'm sorry. I thought.
This message comes from Lisa. Lisa has several different mattress models to choose from, each designed for specific sleep positions and feel preferences. And using the highest quality materials, they meticulously design and assemble their mattresses in America for exceptional comfort and support. Visit lisa.com for 30% off mattresses and a free sleep bundle, plus get an extra $50 off with promo code NPR. That's LEESA.com, promo code NPR. This message comes from NPR sponsor Microsoft Azure. The AI platform shift brings immense opportunity, but the road to success isn't always clear. Leading the Shift is a new podcast from Microsoft Azure, where leaders and visionaries from organizations of all kinds share what they're learning as they navigate this new era of technology. Listen and subscribe now to explore stories of real innovation in real life. Available wherever you get your podcasts. This message comes from Synchrony Bank, who can help you get your do-nothing savings off the couch and working hard. No more sleeping late and eating all the chips. Time to start earning your keep in a big way with their high-yield savings account that has a great rate, easy access to your funds, and no monthly fees or minimum balance requirements. Put your lazy savings to work. Go to synchrony.com/NPR. Member FDIC. Okay, Ron, let's start with hard stuff today. Honestly, because before we can talk about bug wormholes, we kind of need to talk about Einstein's theory of general relativity. And this seems kind of jargony, but it has been talked about in movies. Can you help us out and summarize the theory of general relativity?
General relativity is, in a nutshell, it is geometry. Cubes, spheres, cylinders, pyramids. That could be, just pick your favorite geometry.
Yeah.
But there is a specific set of dimensions.
You're through to your garage. You need me to bring you a ride?
We have found that
I'll bring it by.
Dimensions of 3, so we're talking about X, Y, Z, up, down, left, right, and the added dimension time, right? Physics tends to work, or our reality tends to be well behaved like a well-behaved time, right? But the difference here is that general relativity describes these geometries using curved surfaces, curved spaces. How does event A and event B relate to each other through the curved surface, which is just a webbing of multiple in between the two. So you can think of
like a planet going around, like a Earth going around the sun.
Earth going around the sun. The Earth has mass, the sun has mass. The Earth is actually going to be more attracted to the sun. They both will go on each other, but the Earth sits in the curved surface that the sun creates, and that's why we're doing attracted to it. That's general relativity.
Like the things at the mall we use with the plane, and that's what I always say to my students.
It is a perfect example.
Thank you. Okay, space is curving, and one consequence of that curving is wormholes. Can you describe a wormhole?
So very plainly, I will kind of describe the wormhole like the subway tube. So you get in on one side. So let's say you're getting in on Penn Station in New York, and you get off at Penn Station. But the in-between, right? So just like the subway's going underground, the wormhole is kind of like what we call hyper. So you're not actually, traveling like if you were on the surface. You're kind of tunneling through space-time itself and then coming out on the other side. So it's a very weird kind of like physical attribute.
Okay, and like we said earlier, right, like the tunneling of a wormhole is this like connection from a black hole that consumes matter to this like theoretical white hole that pukes out matter somewhere else in space.
Yeah.
This image is like hard to reconcile with like the classic way teachers describe space-time, like this 4D stretchy sheet. Like think of this trampoline material with like a bowling ball in the center, and that's like a star in space-time. Like, how do you feel about this like stretchy sheet metaphor?
I think the rubber sheet analogy is a scam. I think it's because it doesn't actually. So again, like our definition of general relativity, it doesn't give you these accurate description. This is an introductory to curved surfaces and things like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't actually show you the dimensionality of space and time.
Okay.
So instead of using the rubber sheet, I tend to use putty. You can ball it up into whatever shape you want, and then deform it and curve it and spin it around. Now you're getting all of the physics that kind of involved in the different configurations of space and time, which is general relativity.
Yeah. And maybe like another complication, like for people who have heard it, is this like idea that black holes are like potholes in the fabric of space-time. And we've said it before on the show because it's a great way for scientists to convey this like huge amount of gravity. But in a conversation about wormholes, maybe it's too simplistic. It's better to think about a black hole as a sphere.
This is why, again, I say that the rubber sheet analogy is a scam, because we assume that black holes are actually holes in space. They're not. They're spheres. So they're actually squished spheres because they're rotating, right? And so
Like an interstellar, that artist
like just exactly
image.
like an interstellar.
Yeah.
So it's a great image, and we've taken pictures of black holes and galaxies and seen that these are circles, these are spherical objects.
Wow.
And so then the next thing would be, okay, for a wormhole, what would it look like if I entered a wormhole from one side? Would it be a hole, or would it be just some tube sitting in space? Well, no, it would be one sphere connected to another sphere.
I love that image. It's like a dumbbell. But why are people so resistant to like wormholes' existence? Like, why would we not see one in nature?
So one of the requirements for a wormhole is you need exotic matter.
So like not regular matter that like clumps to itself.
Yeah. So you need matter that's pushing out. You need matter to keep the wormhole, so to speak, open. And that means that is matter that's not trying to clump together like our matter that we know of. If you drop a ball, it's going to fall towards the earth. But this matter, if you drop a ball, it will repel, will go in the opposite direction. And so
it's like anti-gravity.
It's like anti-gravity, but in the sense that we would need, very weird atoms or something to hold the wormhole together. Hold it together and keep it open. So you need a force, if you will, to push against the fabric of space-time to hold it open so that you can go through.
Right.
The other thing is that you need kind of like, so to speak, I would say like fake extra dimension, so that you can travel from point A to point B. If point A is in 4 dimensions and point B is in 4 dimensions, how do you get from A to B if you only have 4 in between, right? So you would need kind of like an extra dimension to travel through and then fall back down into 4.
So like the wormhole itself is a 5th dimension?
It could have a 5th dimension, right? So that you can have the ability to travel through. Did you find your sign? And this is where we get the idea of like hyperspace.
What?
Star Trek, Star Wars, it's all in there. They went to a hyperspace that was an extra dimension larger than the one that they actually lived in.
Wow.
To travel from point A to point B. Yeah.
So I remember reading that, like you were saying, you need this like weird matter or energy to keep wormholes open because they're going to collapse otherwise. So if we were to detect a wormhole, someone from like a different alien civilization would have had to make it.
Something like, yeah.
Why would somebody have to make a wormhole? like civilization?
Yeah, it's entirely based on our understanding of our reality. And so, according to physics and standard model of everything, right, we have not seen any possible evidence or any clues the way matter behaves to suggest that there would be exotic matter without it escaping to use for specifically that wormhole. So that is why, most people, if you ask them, well, what happened if we found a wormhole? That means, well, we found evidence of another civilization. Or we put it there from the future, right? It's another possibility. But
I love talking to theoretical physicists, like anything's possible.
Anything, it could be. But all in all, it does suggest that something created and not, and not it being kind of naturally occurring, because it seems unnatural to exist.
So we're talking about all these like possibilities, right? You would have to find this exotic energy, this exotic matter. But like, so what is the main skepticism when you're talking to astronomers, when you're talking to other scientists? What is main reason why wormholes is something that's kind of still in like the outlier research topics?
Yeah, it's mainly because we can't test it. So it's still kind of looked at as like a science fiction. I wouldn't say it's fringe because we have, real mathematical solutions that we can, kind of stimulate, if you will. But in terms of something being viably testable, because that's the scientific method, we have to recreate it. You can't test for a wormhole.
I can see you.
You can't even create one experimentally. And so that is, I would say, the pushback or the grief against wormhole research is that, it seems like it is decades, if not centuries, of technology ahead of us. And so then the question is, well, why would you study wormholes? Well, I'd say, why would you not? Why not? That is, that's kind of giving us another clue about how our universe could behave. And then given the fact that we've only seen 5% of our observable universe, the other 95% could have wormholes in it, and we've just not looked hard enough.
For you, why is it so important to not rule out these mathematical solutions to general relativity?
Because at one point, space travel was fiction. At one point, the cell phone was fiction. The computer was fiction. Quantum mechanics was fiction. So I look at, all of these theories, and this is kind of my motivation as a theoretical physicist, is that someone has to work on these problems, but do it creatively to generate the advancements in technologies decades later. And so that is why I work on black holes, jet physics, and things like that. And why one would work on wormholes, because we need somebody to solve these very, very fundamental and basic problems and do it creatively and innovatively, right? So that we can have something to advance our technologies later on.
Ron, thank you so much for talking with us today. I've become slightly more hopeful for the existence of wormholes.
That's great. Thank you for having me. This was fantastic.
This episode was produced by Berlin McCoy, edited by our showrunner Rebecca Ramirez, and fact-checked by Tyler Jones. The audio engineer was Jimmy Keeley. Beth Donovan is our senior director, and Colin Campbell is our senior vice president of podcasting strategy. I'm Regina Barber. Thank you for listening to Shortwave from NPR.
This message comes from Insperity, providing HR services and technology, from payroll, benefits, and HR compliance to talent development. Learn more at insperity.com/HRmatters.
You should try it on.
These days, there's a lot of news. It can be hard to keep up with what it means for you, your family, and your community. Consider this from NPR as a podcast that helps you make sense of the news. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a story and provide the context, backstory, and analysis you need to understand our rapidly changing world. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.
I'm Tanya Mosley, co-host of Fresh Air. At a time of sound bites and short attention spans, our show is all about the deep dive.
We do long-form interviews with people behind the best in film, books, TV, music, and journalism. Hear our guests open up about their process and their lives in ways you've never heard before. Listen to the Fresh Air podcast from NPR and WHYY.
From NPR Sports at midnight today.
Take as long as you like.
This message comes from HomeTap. With a home equity investment from HomeTap, you get access to your home equity in cash without monthly payments. Use it to pay off debt, pad your emergency fund, and more. See if you pre-qualify today at hometap.com.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. As you all know, I was obsessed with the 2025 Papal Conclave. There were TikTok edits about all the potential candidates, a Twitter account called Club Conclave, dedicated to following the updates. And before Pope Leo XIV was chosen to lead the Catholic Church, the media was in a full speculative frenzy. But there was just one aspect of the process that I did not expect. People betting on the outcome of the conclave. Similar to the 2024 presidential election, the conclave became a type of sport to follow. And where there's sports betting.
It's only been 7 years since the Supreme Court decision opened the floodgates for legal betting outside Nevada. In that time, Americans have wagered nearly $500 billion.
That is Danny Hunt. He covers sports betting for the Washington Post, and is currently working on a book about the sports betting boom. He's been following how sports betting is changing sports and attracting new groups to the possibility of winning big.
In other forms of gambling, like slots or playing the lottery, a lot of women traditionally play that. The gender divide is so stark in sports betting, like perhaps 80-20 men who like this sort of adrenaline rush of high risk, high reward games. Sports betting is pretty appealing.
A whopping 48% of men 18 to 49 have an account with at least one of the online sports books. Now, if the term sports book sounds unfamiliar to you, don't worry. You probably know these ones.
DraftKings. Now I know Super Bowl and all, but everyone gets a free bet.
I love betting on the NBA with FanDuel, especially when I've got the world's greatest basketball mind on my side.
Platforms like FanDuel and DraftKings give potential bettors access to all types of odds, wagers, and bets, just with a swipe of their finger.
You don't physically have to go to the casino that is like run down and seedy looking, like it's just on your phone.
That is Mamie Fidel, a writer and producer who sometimes bets on sports himself.
You might feel more comfortable betting on Aaron Rodgers to throw a touchdown than you would be on the 50-50 chance of getting a red versus a black in roulette, for example.
He wrote an article in GQ about his sports betting experience and how he's opting out of participating in sports betting's biggest and most enticing moneymaker.
Specifically, I've had this beef with the same game parlay. It's lottery-esque, right? It's like you can bet $10 and win $1,000.
While it can be a fun way to spice up a game, sports betting has become so ubiquitous that it almost feels separate from gambling entirely. And for me, that raised some alarm bells.
People think of it as a side hustle or even like an investing strategy. 80% of American adults who bet on sports think they can make money doing it.
Now more than ever, finances are at the top of everyone's mind. And young people are feeling that pressure especially hard. But sports betting seems to be hitting a cultural nerve that has some young men in a bind.
There's also just a kind of financial desperation that seems to be at play, turning sports betting into more of a lottery type. Bet a little for the chance at winning a lot is so appealing, just like crypto, where you're sort of saying, I know I'm probably going to lose money, but if this is a way that I can win a ton of money, I'm so desperate, I'll take that shot.
This is Money Troubles. And for the next few minutes, we're looking into the ways everyday people are trying to make ends meet, and what that says about how our culture views labor, basic needs, or even our favorite pastimes. Today, Manny and Danny join me to get into how sports betting has gone from pastime to potential side hustle, even changing the way we watch sports. And I want to know, what does the rise in sports betting mean for the love of the game? Okay, first off, how has sports betting gotten this kind of brand makeover or change in framing that's been so appealing to young guys?
Have you guys ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? I think that comes into play with sports betting, where bettors who are disproportionately men feel like in sports they know better than the chances of the thing happening. You know, if I put $25 into the S&P 500, generally speaking, you might get $50 in a year or something like that.
The long arc of time.
Yeah.
Will get you something.
You'll get some returns on it. Whereas if I put $25 on Steph Curry to make 4 3-pointers tonight, I'll get my $25 back immediately for $50. Now, that's a trap, right? That's what the sports books want you to feel like.
Yeah, well, when you said that brand makeover, which is such a good way of putting it, when ESPN partnered with a gambling company to launch ESPN Bet, one of the on-air hosts got in some trouble for saying this is basically a risk-free investment if you bet on ESPN Bet. I mean, there's just so many ways subtly and, you know, in a more heavy-handed fashion that present this to people as a money-making venture. And survey results of sports bettors bear that out. I mean, again, just last year, there was a survey that said 80% of American adults who bet on sports think they can make money doing it. In reality, maybe 1 in 100 people make money betting on sports long term.
Whoa.
That's what really concerns me about the kind of advertising that we see from sports books. And specifically, I've had this beef with the same game parlay.
Say more about that. I learned a little bit about this and it kind of blew my mind, and a lot of our listeners maybe.
Regular bet, you know, you bet $10 on the Lakers to win. A same game parlay is you bet $10 that the Lakers are going to win, but also that LeBron James is going to score 20 points, and also that Austin Reeves is going to score 10 points. And the more steps you add to it, the higher your payout will be. But every single step has to be successful. Even if 1 of the 10 fails, then your bet loses. And this is the kind of bet that I've seen the most advertising about from sportsbooks.
It seems incredibly risky.
It's incredibly risky, and it's sportsbooks presenting you this fantasy.
The same game parlay, like, is this like a type of bet that's always been around? Or is it unique to sports betting now?
So it's always existed, but more on the margins. But the idea that you could construct like one of thousands of different forms of same game parlay on every single game, day after day after day, is a total invention of the online sports betting era. So much so that even a company like DraftKings, that's number 2 nationally behind FanDuel, their executives have told me, like, we never anticipated just how much this would catch on, that this would be our biggest moneymaker. The margin is so much higher on those bets. The odds are basically cranked up in the house's favor that you're going to long-term lose like 20 to 30% of your money on same-game parlays, whereas if you're just betting on the Lakers to win or the Lakers to go over a certain point total, the more conventional types of betting, on those you're going to lose like $5 or $10 for every 100 you go over. So way more easy to burn through your money doing the same-game parlay.
For a long time, gambling was sort of seen as like this heat, right? And now you can see, you know, the sports analysts getting bets or Kevin Hart commercials, the DraftKings. I wonder, like, has sports betting rebranded gambling more broadly?
Yeah, the celebrity advertisers have such a big impact. I'm always a little hesitant to make the tobacco analogy for sports betting just because it's such an inflammatory one. You want to be careful there. But if you were to draw a comparison, the way that A-list celebrities marketed cigarettes in, you know, the 1950s and made it seem cool to young people is totally reminiscent of the way that Kevin Hart and Jamie Foxx and LeBron James and all these icons now advertise sports betting. But just the way that it normalizes it among young people especially is such a big part of the story.
Coming up.
honestly, the way people talk about sports sometimes is the way that like owners of teams are criticized. And these guys are just chips on a board for them, and it's who's making you money? What have you done for me lately?
How sports betting has changed the meaning of sports. This message comes from Puma. Create your oasis with Puma, a modern design company that specializes in furniture and home goods. By stripping away everything but the essential, Puma makes elevated beds with premium materials and intentional details. With clean lines, subtle curves, and minimalist style, the Puma bed collection is available with 4 signature finishes to match any design style. To get $100 towards your first bed purchase, go to thuma.co/NPR.
This message comes from Max, from the creator of Succession. Don't miss the new HBO original film, Mountain, starring Steve Carell, Jason Schwartzman, Corey Michael Smith, and Ronnie Houston. 4 rival tech billionaires gathered for their annual Mountain retreat, but when one of their AI platforms sparks a global crisis, their voice spirals into chaos. Mountain premieres Saturday, May 31st at 8 p.m. exclusively on Max.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Shopify. No idea where to sell? Shopify takes you in control of every sales team. It is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a small entrepreneur or IT already, Shopify is the only tool you need to start, grow, and grow your business without the struggle. Once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. Go to shopify.com/NPR to take your business to the next level today.
This message comes from Matt Mason, committed to making math fun and building confidence so students can achieve their potential this school year. Offering customized math instruction and individual attention to students in grades K through 12. MathMason.com.
I wonder about the ways in which we're seeing young men think about sports betting as a side hustle or as a smart spending activity, and how that kind of fits in with the way that they have gravitated toward other types of financial risk, like day trading or cryptocurrency. Not even just talking about like the money making aspect, but there's like a bro culture around those things that to me feels very similar to sports betting. Is that something that y'all are observing as well? And if you are,
There's been a lot of discourse about like the male loneliness epidemic, and in that sense, I see all of these like new kind of micro communities and group chats being formed, and I feel like a weird sense of warmth that like men are talking to each other about something every day and creating these different avenues for communication. Obviously, I'm someone who's like, all right, there's something like you've got to be able to engage in this activity responsibly. And just so my friends don't yell at me after they hear this, I do think sports betting can be like, as long as you're doing it responsibly and not kind of using it to get rich quick.
Yeah, there's that like bro hustle culture that you're describing that seems bigger than this. There's also just a kind of financial desperation that seems to be at play, like when we were talking about the appeal of same-game parlays, why turning sports betting into more of a lottery type bet a little for the chance of winning a lot is so appealing, just like crypto, investing in crypto or other types of retail investing where you're sort of saying, I know I'm probably going to lose money, but if this is a way that I can win a ton of money, I'm so desperate, I'll take that shot. And it's the easiest way to survive at the night when you're sitting at home and like watching mid-season basketball or, week 7 of football. And, the ability to just like swipe your finger and it's suddenly, the most intense game you've ever watched because you've got a lot of money on the line is irresistible to a lot of people.
Yeah, that desperation layer to it right so much because even on social media, you see like people who have placed bets tagging actual athletes in their posts, screaming at them for not making the last layup or whatever at the end of the game. You see people have real life interactions with athletes. That to me speaks to like the most poisonous aspects of sports betting, where you bring yourself to go outside of the app and confront an athlete about their performance on your bet. And so that's definitely scary, like that's a mental concern.
how sports betting changed how we do sports?
Yeah, I mean, the cynics say it's made sports more transactional, where like you used to, in an ideal world, have like a very sentimental bond with your own team or your favorite player. Those sorts of aspirational reasons, but honestly, the way people talk about sports sometimes is the way that like owners of teams are criticized, and these guys are just chips on the board for them. And it's, you know, who's making me money? What have you done for me lately? I don't have that emotional bond for this team. It's just numbers on the page that I'm trying to, you know, get wealthy. So that to me is honestly depressing.
I feel like sports is one of the few like arenas in society, for culture more broadly, where a lot of it you get down to is really about the joy of hard work. And the joy of hard work is like also appreciated in things, right? Like there's like a real simplicity and like a spectacle thing, which is like seeing people do these incredible things with their bodies. They have been through a combination of like heredity and luck and a lot of hard work they've been able to achieve. Like WNBA World Cup, I'm like sports is being endorsed on their things. And there's something really beautiful about that. At the end of the day, you get down to it. That's the reason that I've always felt like sports before. But with this uptick in online sports betting, what is sports about now?
You mentioned the WNBA, and when I got into it a while back, it felt like it wasn't quite as toxic. Like, of course, these are world-class athletes, you know, playing at the highest level, but it felt a little less toxic than some of the male professional sports, which I love too, but it just was something refreshing, like going to the games or watching the games. It felt different. And this past year, there are a lot of reasons, you know, the polarization of, you know, the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, some new rivalries in the league. Like, there are a lot of reasons why it was just a little bit more intense than in past years, but I do think that, like, the money being bet on the WNBA last year versus previous years may have played a part in making the fan base a little more toxic, a little bit more aggressive in just how they consume the sport. So again, when we talk about the trade-offs of legalization, that's a huge one.
Yeah, I think in sports, viewing, you know, at the very kind of ceremonial almost experience, and I've started to see very tiny but very resistant examples of the ceremonial, the game, of the purity of basketball, for example, being affected by sports betting, not just in the audience, but also like on the actual court. So, you know, we've had actual players get in trouble with that.
Dante Porter.
Yes, that's right. So he's been kind of just completely banned from the league. I think that was the right thing for him to do, but we don't know the full extent of that. That's happening in other places where players haven't been caught yet. And so I do, as a fan, have a huge concern about like kind of the sanctity of sports when gambling can get this ingrained into the logic experience.
Well, there's a lot that's going on, a lot that's still emerging, and I'm so grateful that I'm listening to stuff all this with you. Manny, Danny, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That was writer and producer Manny Fidel and journalist David Clark. And I'm going to turn my influencer hat for a second. I'm going to ask you to please subscribe to this show on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening. Click follow so you know the latest in culture politics. This episode of The 10 Minutes was produced by Alexis Williams. This episode was edited by Nina Parker. Our supervising producer is Charlie Woodward. Our executive producer is Beverly Williams. Our VP of programming is Yolanda Sangre. All right, that's all for this episode of The 10 Minutes with NPR. I'm Victor. Talk soon. This message is from Cindy Miguel, who wants to remind you to stay excellent. Do not be good at events such as performing kind of flexible, financially flexible, like with their high-yield savings. Stay flexible at Centennial.com/NPR. Under FDIC. I'm Tanya Mosley, co-host of Fresh Air. At a time of sound bites and short attention spans, our show is all about the deep dive. We do long-form interviews with people behind the best in film, books, music, and journalism.
Hello,
Here our guests
this is
open
Morse
up about
Mutual
their
Insurance.
process and their lives.
I think we can
Ways
handle
we've
that.
never heard before. Listen to the Fresh Air Podcast, NPR, and the New Fly App.
These days, there's a lot of news. It can be hard to keep up with what it means for you, your family, and your community.